Right now, somewhere in your apartment, there is a device that knows where you are, talks to satellites orbiting 12,000 miles above your head, connects to a global network of interconnected machines, runs calculations that would have required a room-sized computer in 1975, and you use it to check if it's going to rain. You know roughly that it does these things. You've said phrases like GPS signal and Wi-Fi and the algorithm out loud in real sentences, confidently, in front of other adults. But if someone put a gun to your head, a very calm academic gun, and said, "Explain to me specifically how any of this works," most of us would produce about 30 seconds of vague gesturing before arriving at something with satellites and trailing off, which is fine. You don't need to understand how a car engine works to drive one. Except, and this is the part that keeps me up at night, we're not just using these things. We're organizing our entire lives around them. We trust them completely. We get anxious when they break. We make decisions based on their outputs every single day, and we have almost no idea what's actually happening inside them. So let's fix that. Not the engineering version, not the textbook version, the version where you actually get it. Let's start with the thing closest to you right now, your Wi-Fi. You are, at this very moment, probably connected to a network that you think of as the internet being in the air, which is technically true the way it's technically true that the ocean is just some water. The mental model most people have is router exists, internet comes out, phone picks it up, done. And that model works great until your internet goes out and you're standing next to the router with a look on your face like you might try talking to it. Here's what's actually happening. Your router is connected, physically, to a wire. That wire eventually connects to a larger wire, which connects to an even larger wire, which connects, through a series of increasingly serious infrastructure, to massive buildings called data centers, where the actual internet lives. Your router's job is not to produce the internet, it's to translate a wire into a radio signal, and to translate that radio signal back into a wire signal for anything that wants to use it. That's it. It's a translator. A very small, ugly, blinking translator that you've put on the floor behind your TV because it was in the way. The Wi-Fi part, the actual wireless bit, works by broadcasting radio waves at specific frequencies. 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz if you've ever looked at your network settings and wondered what those numbers meant. Your phone's Wi-Fi chip is listening on those frequencies, catches the signal, and they have a very fast conversation using a protocol called 802.11, which is the actual technical name for Wi-Fi, and which I share with you purely because the gap between Wi-Fi and 802.11 is the entire gap between how friendly technology presents itself and what it actually is. The speed you get depends on how much data can fit in that radio conversation and how quickly they can have it. Walls slow it down because radio waves lose energy passing through material. Other devices slow it down because they're all competing for the same frequency, like trying to have a conversation in a crowded bar where everyone is also trying to have a conversation. 5 gigahertz is faster but shorter range. 2.4 gigahertz goes further but gets congested easier. This is why moving your router to the center of your apartment is not just an aesthetic choice your tech bro friend keeps annoying you about. It actually matters. Now, the thing those radio waves are carrying? That's data. And data is just ones and zeros, which you've heard before. But what does that mean? When you load a web page, your phone sends a request, essentially a very specific knock on a very specific door, to a server somewhere in the world. That server sends back data in small chunks called packets. Each packet travels through the network independently, gets reassembled at your end, and becomes the web page you're looking at. This happens in milliseconds. The fact that it works this way, broken into pieces, sent separately, reassembled, is actually a feature, not a bug. It was designed during the Cold War specifically so that information could still travel across a network, even if part of the network was destroyed. Your ability to watch a video at 2 a.m. is a direct inheritance of 1960s nuclear paranoia, which brings us to GPS. Your phone knows where you are to within a few meters. It does this by listening, and only listening, to signals from satellites. Your phone never sends anything to a GPS satellite. That's the part people get backwards. GPS is not a phone call. It's more like your phone is standing in a field, and 4 or 5 satellites are yelling out the time at the top of their lungs, and your phone listens to all of them and does math. Here's the math. Each satellite broadcasts the exact time and its exact position. Your phone receives those signals. Because the signal travels at the speed of light, there's a tiny delay between when the satellite sent the signal and when your phone received it. That delay tells your phone how far away that satellite is. Do that with 4 satellites at once, and you can triangulate, or technically trilaterate, your exact position in 3 dimensions, including altitude. The whole thing depends on the satellites having insanely accurate clocks. We're talking atomic clocks, accurate to within a nanosecond, and they have to be. At the speed of light, a microsecond of error is 300 meters of positional error, which is the difference between your destination is on the right and your destination is 3 blocks away, figure it out. Here's the part that genuinely messed with me when I learned it. The satellites are moving so fast, about 14,000 kilometers per hour, that time actually moves slightly differently for them than it does for us, according to general relativity. Einstein stuff. Real, applicable, in your daily life, Einstein stuff. If the GPS system didn't correct for relativistic time dilation, the position errors would accumulate by about 10 kilometers per day. Einstein's theory of relativity is not just an abstract physics concept. It's actively baked into the software running your navigation app. It's a correction they have to apply every day for the GPS to work. Every time you use Google Maps to find a coffee shop, you are benefiting from Einstein being right. Okay, the algorithm. The algorithm is the phrase we all use to explain things we can't explain. The algorithm put this on my feed. I'm fighting the algorithm. The algorithm knows me too well. And we say it in a way that implies we know roughly what it is, some kind of very smart sorting system, while also implying it's a little bit magic or maybe alive. It's not magic, but it's not simple either. And the version most people have in their heads is at least 10 years out of date. The old version, the version from early social media, was basically a point system. Likes count for this much, comments for this much, shares for more, recency matters. Accounts you engage with a lot go higher. You could roughly game it if you knew the weights. Brands spent a lot of money and energy trying to figure out the weights. Entire marketing agencies existed specifically to reverse engineer the point system. That version is mostly gone. What replaced it is a machine learning model, and the difference is significant. A point system follows rules a human set. A machine learning model finds its own rules by watching what millions of people actually do, not what they say they like, what they actually engage with, and then applies those patterns to predict what any given person will do next. The practical result is that the current algorithm is not really trying to show you what you'll like. It's trying to predict what you'll engage with. And those are not the same thing. You can deeply not like a piece of content and still engage with it because it made you angry or anxious, or because you watched it for 15 seconds trying to figure out if it was real before scrolling away. The algorithm logged that. It thought, interesting. It will think about that. This is why your feed sometimes feels like a stranger who knows too much about you and also seems to want things to go slightly sideways, because they don't optimize for satisfaction. They optimize for engagement. And the two things are correlated but not identical. And the gap between them is where a lot of late-night scrolling and vague unease lives. There's one more layer. These models don't just look at you. They look at people like you, people who liked what you like, watched what you watched, paused on the same things you paused on. And they extrapolate. If 80% of people who behave like you eventually watched a certain type of content and engaged heavily, the model will start nudging you toward that content before you've ever searched for it. It's not reading your mind. It's reading the minds of 1,000 people who were already you 3 months ago. Now let's talk about the thing keeping you alive every time you get in a car. ABS, anti-lock braking system. The little light on your dashboard. You probably know the words, anti-lock, brakes, and you know it's a safety feature. And you know you're not supposed to pump the brakes yourself anymore because the car does it for you. That's the general shape of it. Here's what's actually happening. When you slam the brakes hard, the brakes want to lock the wheels, stop them spinning completely. Which sounds like what you'd want. Stop the wheel, stop the car. But a locked wheel slides instead of rolls. And a sliding tire has way less grip than a rolling one. Way less. A locked wheel is basically a hockey puck. You can't steer, you can't control direction. You're just a passenger at that point. ABS prevents this by releasing and reapplying the brakes very, very fast, up to 15 or 20 times per second, way faster than any human foot. The wheel never fully locks. It keeps rolling, which means it keeps gripping, which means you can still steer. This is why, in an emergency, you should just stomp the brake and keep steering, which is genuinely counterintuitive because human instinct is to also freeze your hands. The system works by monitoring the rotation speed of each wheel individually. If one wheel suddenly slows down much faster than the others, the computer goes, that wheel is about to lock, and it backs off the braking pressure on that specific wheel for a fraction of a second. The pulsing you feel through the brake pedal in a hard stop, that juddering feeling that kind of freaks people out, that's the ABS cycling. It's working. It feels wrong because it feels like something is broken, but it's the thing that's keeping you from sliding. The sensors doing this work are tiny magnetic sensors sitting next to the wheel that count the pulses of a toothed ring spinning with the wheel. They know the rotation speed to a resolution that a human being could not perceive. They are making mechanical decisions in milliseconds. The car you're driving while thinking about what to get for dinner is running a continuous, high-frequency safety calculation you never consciously opted into. Let's do one more. The one you interact with more than almost any technology in your life, the touch screen. Your phone screen knows where your finger is without any moving parts, without any pressure, without anything physically making contact with anything mechanical. You're just touching glass, and it knows. The technology behind this is called capacitive sensing, and the key word is capacitive, from capacitor, a component that stores electrical charge. Your screen is covered in a grid of tiny transparent electrodes, arranged in rows and columns, running a small electrical field across the surface. Human fingers are conductive. When your finger gets close to the screen, it changes the electrical field at that specific point, pulls on it slightly, distorts it. The screen detects that distortion and calculates where it happened. It's not detecting pressure, it's detecting the electrical effect of your finger being near it. This is also why touchscreens don't respond to most regular gloves. Fabric isn't conductive, so it doesn't distort the field. Touchscreen gloves have conductive thread woven into the fingertips. It also explains why the screen sometimes responds to your face if you're lying on it scrolling, which is either endearing or a little sad depending on the night. The multi-touch part, pinching to zoom, using two fingers, works because the grid can detect multiple simultaneous distortions and process them at the same time. This seems obvious now, but when it was first demonstrated in the mid-2000s, it looked like actual magic. Jeff Hahn's demo at TED in 2006, before the iPhone, had an audience audibly gasping as he spread his fingers to zoom a map. People acted like he was doing something that shouldn't be possible. He was manipulating electrical fields with his hands, and a grid of electrodes was doing the math. You do this hundreds of times a day without registering it as remarkable, which is the specific kind of thing this whole video is about. Because here's what's interesting when you step back. Every one of these things follows the same pattern. There's a layer you can see, the map loading, the feed refreshing, the screen responding, the car stopping, and then there's a layer you can't see, which is the actual thing. The actual thing is always more specific, more clever, and more connected to the real world than the mental model you've been operating with. The GPS satellite doesn't just send your location down to you, like a parent tracking a teenager. It broadcasts the time to the universe and lets your phone do the geometry. The algorithm isn't a particularly opinionated librarian. It's a prediction engine running on the aggregate behavior of millions of people who were already you months ago. Your brakes aren't just stopping the car. They're performing 20 calculations per second on individual wheel behavior to maintain the physics of grip. Your screen isn't detecting your touch. It's detecting your electrical presence. And your Wi-Fi isn't receiving the internet from the sky. It's translating a wire into a radio wave and back, 802.11 style, because someone in the 1990s needed to stop running Ethernet cables across their office floor. These are not complicated ideas once you hear them. That's the thing. None of this required a physics degree to understand. It just required someone to explain the right layer, not the metaphor, not the marketing version, the actual thing. The thing hiding 1 inch below the explanation you always got. And once you start seeing that gap between the label and the mechanism, between what you call something and what it's actually doing, you start seeing it everywhere. The button you press, the transaction that clears, the notification that arrives, the photo that uploads, the map that recalculates. Every single one of these is a chain of specific physical events that someone designed, tested, and maintained, and that you access through a surface so smooth and simple it hides all of that completely, which is a genuine achievement. The goal of good design is to make the mechanism invisible, to let you just use the thing, and it mostly works. It works so well, in fact, that you can go decades using tools of extraordinary complexity and come away with a mental model that's essentially a cartoon. Arrows and cloud shapes and vibes. That's not a personal failing. That's the design working as intended. But there's a difference between not needing to understand something and not understanding it. Between choosing not to go deeper and never having had the option, you've had it now.